right, my name is Tig, or Melody. I am a trans woman, and yes, I know I don't sound like one. I am 2 months into my transition. Autistic, mentally ill, disabled witch. Yeah, right. And this is my good friend, Cade Romero.
Hi, I'm here too. I didn't have anything ready. I was just like, oh.
This is our second take. Come on, dude.
You're the one that's got to be all eccentric. Like most podcasts, like they don't care. Like
Right.
the one that you're listening to now, like it's so fucking chaotic. I can't.
I love it. They cut up all the time. It's the history. It's my brain. It's something about occult history. It's a great podcast. And this is my beautiful nesting partner, Rain Dead Fame.
Hello.
Thank you for that dynamic introduction.
You're
What kind of a witch are you, Rain?
Polytheistic, voodoo witch.
That's badass as fuck. And this is my handsome boyfriend, Isaiah Ivy.
Hi, I'm Isaiah. I'm a trans man and am new to magic.
They're a baby witch.
I'm a baby witch.
You are definitely not a baby witch. You're a baby witch if you're starting like your first year on your fucking master's degree or some shit like that.
No, they're baby. They always say they're baby.
I'm baby.
Oh, you are not baby.
I am baby!
You sat down at the big kids like a couple weeks ago at PCR, so you are not a baby.
All trans masks have baby energy.
Yeah.
Yes, this is true. This is true.
Lots of pets.
See,
And-
Briar gets me.
And this is Briar.
Hi.
What kind of a witch are you, Briar?
I consider myself an eclectic witch. I like to pick from multiple different places and learn different cultures.
And I guess I should, before we launch it and get into it, I should say something about the kind of magic that I practice, because I'm sitting here telling people I'm going to teach you magic. Well, what kind of magic do I do?
What are your qualifications?
What are my qualifications? I started out 20 years ago in chaos magic because I was an edgy 20-something man, and that's what we do. And but I kind of went off in a completely different direction than most chaos magicians. I was looking for magic that works. So that led me a lot of different places, but led me to shamanism, a lot of indigenous practices. I've been going like back to the history of magic for many years, and I studying theology and psychology and all the things surrounding magic, and then my practice really shifted about baby Rain. When did I have my panic attack? That was like my very first panic
It
attack.
was like 2016.
2016, and my mental and physical health just took a fucking nosedive, and I was just really struggling going through the mental health, system, which can help some people, but is mostly just part of the capitalist system like everything else is, and fails a lot of people, and it was failing me. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was lamenting about, like, I just wish I could be myself again. And he said, brother, because I was a man at that time, they're not going to heal you. You can only heal yourself. And that moment changed my life. So I started integrating spirituality into my own mental health my own mental health journey. And then I started integrating all of these years of magic and studying more and more of how magic can be used to heal trauma, and heal yourself emotionally and psychically. And I am still pretty fucked up, but I have achieved peace and love and joy in my life, which is something I never thought I would do. So I'm just trying to share that with people who I think it would help But as far as the kind of magic I do, I'm still a chaos magician. I do what works.
Okay, so I think everybody should talk about the first time that they used magic and how it affected you the first time.
Well, thank you for volunteering to go first, Rain.
Are you always volunteering for shit?
I didn't. You volunteered yourself. When we were in the military, you came up with a good idea. Guess who's going to do that idea? That's how you got rewarded for having ideas.
Thanks for bringing up my past trauma. So let's see. Back in my day, no, I'm kidding. I think the first time I ever thought about magic was actually when I was 14. I went to the library and I was just wandering around, and then I found a book on magic, and I'm trying to remember the author, but I think the last name on the book was Silver Rain.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so those there was a ton of her books in the library, which is strange for Hesperia because Hesperia is very conservative Christian.
You probably read the same library books that I did 20 years apart.
Oh shit. And that's the freakiest thing because we went through a lot of experiences years apart. And so I started reading one in the library, and then I just remember grabbing all of them and checking them out and taking them home. And I read all of those books, and I think my very first spell. Oh my god, I was so naive. My very first spell was a love spell because I had a crush on somebody.
Of course. Whose isn't? Mine isn't, but most people's is.
But do you?
Yeah, so it was a love spell because I had a crush on somebody, and I was basically I want this person to pay attention to me, because I'm super logical with things, so I was immediately you can't fuck with free will, but you can give suggestions. And so the suggestion was this person just pay a little bit more attention to me, and then I can take it from there. And it fucking worked. They started.
What'd you do?
I wrote down their name and I put it under my pillow. That's
It's a very hoodoo thing to do.
Yeah, but it was a very baby witch thing to do.
No, but that's good. You're sending those intentions of your dreams and your thoughts to the pillow, and so that's good.
Yeah. So I went to school. It wasn't the very next day. It took a while. I want to say after we came back from Thanksgiving break, it was when they really started paying attention to me.
Right.
And it was probably because I didn't see that person, it was building up.
Right.
And then so when they finally saw me, it was I have to talk to you right now. Which it was kind of like that. I remember I went to science class because we had the same science class, and we changed seats, and they sat next to me, and they were immediately excited that they were sitting next to me. And we talk all the time, and then a couple weeks after that, they were my boyfriend. And I was holy shit. And I was what have I done?
Now, so because this is something I want to talk about later, in another episode. But so let me ask you this: how did that relationship turn out?
It was, it's funny being older and knowing about NRE, and then going back to old relationships and be holy shit, that whole relationship was this NRE, and it fizzled out.
Right.
NRE is new relationship energy for anyone listening
Yes.
and not knowing what that is.
Right.
So I want to say it went on for 6 months, and just life problems got in the way. Their family was super racist, and there was no possible way.
Oh, was that the guy you were telling me about?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And Like, they're like, my mom can't see you, like, because they'll get mad and blah, 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 and all this shit. And, like,
Who's coming to dinner
yeah,
in the fucking 2000s?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
wild.
And like, it just got, like, to this point where, like, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. But where I fucked up is that, like, I, like, took this newfound confidence and started talking to somebody else before breaking up with them. And then it all came crashing down.
That's very interesting. Kate,
What
what was the first witch shit you did?
Which shit I did? Well, the problem is that I usually don't do witch shit so much as it happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm usually the recipient of some kind of,
Yes.
yeah, like, I was thinking, maybe I should just talk about my first vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Which, by the way, if whoever has access to the email of Prism Witches, someone could check that and let me know if that email went through.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Excellent. So, in my case, I was in the midst of like a, what do they call it? Deconstruction. Deconstructing my Mormon upbringing just after coming back from my mission, because everything that I enjoyed about my mission had nothing to do with the church, and everything that bothered me about my mission was what the church did, which kind of made sense in retrospect. They say, like, they say it, the ex-Mormons like to say it, but I'm pretty sure it's a common parlance in Christianity, or un-Christians, ex-Christians in general, is that the church, everything that the church offers that is unique is not good, and everything that the church offers that is good is not unique. So I was already kind of pondering other pathways and, like, just kind of, like, reading about, like, the history of stuff. I had started with the ancestry that I specifically knew of, which was Aztec ancestry on my dad's side, and then on my mom's side, my mom said she was Irish, because I think that's what Americans love to say, to exoticize themselves. But as I'm reading about all this, like, and pondering it and falling asleep one night, it was kind of like, well, let me go to my vision here. I was drifting off to sleep when I found myself standing in a meadow. I stood in a patch of tall grass surrounded on all sides by thick forest. The day was clear and bright, and all around me was green. I could hear on the wind the distant voices of people from outside the forest. I became aware that I was not alone. Beside me materialized a woman. I could notice at first that her eyes were the same rich green as the surrounding forest. Her black hair came from the night over which reigned the moon. Her skin was the most ancient of brown, the same color as the fertile silt deposits alongside the Nile River, which prompted the ancient Egyptians to begin settling and, create civilization. Upon her head was a wreath of ever-changing flowers, and she wore a simple dress made from the hide of the ancient aurochs, which once roamed the earth, the ancestors of cows, by the way. Her lower legs and feet were bare. She smiled, and in her smile I could see all of the happiness of life. I knew she was Mother Goddess. She was divine feminine.
It's beautiful.
I was in my early 20s, so that may be why she, the triple goddess, had appeared to me as a maiden. I had been raised in a patriarchal religion, and I knew then that she was whom I had been seeking, and why I had to leave behind the beliefs of my youth.
It's beautiful.
She was a head shorter than me and reached up her flawless hand to stroke my cheek. I heard in my head and felt in my heart a greeting of warmth and desire. Then she asked me what my desire was, again, not with words, but in my heart and in my head. I spoke out loud my simple desire. I wished to navigate the forest. And then she walked over to the nearest tree. Looking back at me, she asked, "Are you otherwise unable to do so?" I said, "I seek the path through the forest." She beckoned me to the tree line and pointed into the forest. "Do you see a path?" I saw no path as I looked into the forest. The forest floor was covered with a patchwork of leaves and grass. I saw no place where the forest floor had been worn down to dirt or rock. I saw no place where people had previously trodden. I was not even able to tell if the forest had ever been traversed. I see no path, I told her. Look, was all she said in response. As I looked, I realized that the space between the trees would be quite easy to walk. The forest floor was mostly flat, with only occasional obstacles, such as a fallen tree or a rogue shrub. It would be easy to walk through the forest without any path. Without any path was possible. I would be able to navigate between the trees any way I desired. Mother Goddess said to me, "It is by realizing that there is no path that you see the truth of the forest." I responded, "There are infinite paths."
Fuck.
That's the story that I was telling you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
That gives me chills. That's the second time you've told that story to me, and it still gives me chills.
Mm-hmm.
I love that your first experience was really a mystical experience. It was a life, something that changed your perspective, and we're going to be talking today about listening, and that's a fuck. I think you traveled. I think you were in.
Probably. I mean, it was kind of like that same headspace when we've gone on the shamanic journeys, and you just kind of, like you said, you start with a prompt, because I was just kind of thinking, I was just thinking peaceful thoughts and just trying to like kind of come together, but at the same time, that day and for the previous month or so, I'd been just like pondering, pathways out of the religion, and that was really like, that was the first time that I was really like, this is what's missing, like on planet Earth. It's like I wanted divine feminine, because, well, I mean, later I came to realize like, oh, divine masculine is also completely different than that which we are taught.
Yes.
But at the time, I was just trying to like get out from under the patriarchy, so to speak.
And that's something that we're also going to be talking about as far as like Prism Witches is divine gender roles, because as we are, 4 out of the 5, Cade is the token straight guy. all the rest of us are spicy gender.
And, white guy.
Yes, and so
they're probably gonna think it's like my pet project too. I'll be like, this white guy's the guy funding it. I know it.
That's hilarious. I also thought about how like both you and I really entered this journey in our 20s, because so many people, usually you tell somebody, when did you know you're a witch, and it usually happens in adolescence or childhood, but you and I grew up Christian and came to it later. Yeah.
Like, I want to add that like I really didn't get in touch with any deities until I met you. Like before, it was like because like I'm pretty like sensitive to like energies and also like spirits and stuff like that. So like my entire childhood, I was like terrorized by like seeing things.
Right.
And I don't think it was until I met you like that I was actually able to like focus that more. Like, instead of just being like, oh, I don't see it, it doesn't exist, kind of mentality.
Right.
And I don't really think I started talking to my ancestors until after I met you.
Oh, well, and you were the one who told me that Carnunos was with me, and I didn't even know. I don't really see things. I'm supposed to. I've been trying to visit a friend of mine in Las Vegas, beautiful friend of mine, who I hope to, bring in on these discussions, but once in a while. And they're going to help me see. I mostly like sense, but you see, and I had no idea. And you were like, he has always been. When did you notice that?
I want to say I noticed like towards like the end of the second year we were together, like so a little bit after we got married.
Right.
Because that was when
we
both started getting like serious.
We were doing heavy magic at that time. We were in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were doing some like.
I have a question, but whenever you're done.
We were doing some like heavy manifesting.
Yes.
Which is why we have this
Why
house.
we have this house.
We manifested this house.
Yes.
And
very quickly too. Like less than 30 days.
Yeah, they were gonna raise our rent from like $800 to like $1,300
like I could.
in a matter of a month.
Right. I was basically some summary of the story is like I got caught in the recession, lost my job. We were living. I had a really shitty job with getting paid nothing, and we were living in Section 8 housing.
Yeah.
And then I got a better job, and they raised my rent like that, and we did not have the money. So it was literally cheaper to buy a house at that time than it was to rent. Not now. Fuck.
Yeah.
What were you?
Oh, the question was if you could elaborate a bit on what you mean by carnoonist.
We're saying a lot of things that we're gonna have to fill in.
Or I have to like write a like small paper with sources. And,
I know, right?
And
Carnunos is a. There's not a lot known about him. You were talking about the sacred feminine. Carnunos is to me the sacred masculine. A early Celtic deity that doesn't really have. There's no written history of him, but he is very active in the world at this time. He's a nature god, he's a sex god, and
a horned god.
a horned god, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently he's been with me for a long time, and I didn't know that until Rain told me. Rain sees a lot of the spirits that are with me. I sense them, but I don't see them.
It's horrifying
I don't know whether to tell the story of the first weird spiritual experience I had or the first time I actually did a spell. I'll tell the second one. So I had been, I grew up Christian, went to Bible college, became a minister, lost my faith, joined the military. All right. So all of that time, I was fascinated since a young child of the history of religion, the philosophy and theology of religion and spirituality. And so even when I left the church, I would read, and that took me back to the history of religion. Took me back to like folk stories, myths, legends, and I realized that every culture around the world believed in magic. So hey, maybe there's something to it. And so I read a couple books on magic, trying to figure out what this thing is. And then a friend of my second wife's, her husband went missing. And so she called, he was gone for like weeks. And so one night, she called my wife and she was panicking and crying. And my wife was like, hey, can we do something about this? So I was like, hey, well, we can go cruise around the Bay Area for the rest of our lives trying to find this motherfucker, or let's try magic. And this is the only time in my life that I've ever because the only knowledge I had from at that point in time was shit I'd read in books, and I didn't even really believe in it. I was like, maybe, I don't know. So I did the whole fucking pentagram and salt shit with the fucking candles at the quarters and all this stuff, and we got real, and we she had some of his hair and we put it around her locket and we made like a spiritual magnet out of it and sent it out. Where I was living at that time, I was stationed at Travis Air Force Base in the Bay Area of California, and we sent it out. And that night he called her, but it was better if he would have just stayed gone. He'd gone back to his old ways of fucking and slinging drugs and doing drugs, and he'd gone back to the life. So it would even though it caused her a lot of angst and pain, it caused more pain by him coming back. And that's so I clearly remember my action. I clearly remember magic scaring the fucking shit out of me. Isaiah.
You had all this time to prepare.
That's like a really complicated question for me, because I've been doing magic without knowing I've been doing magic.
We all have, yep.
So, like...
When's the first time you realized it?
In bulk.
In bulk?
Yeah.
Talk about in bulk.
So, I don't even know where to start.
Well, it was us. I can see this is more shit we have to explain. we are polyamorous. That is not where the poly in Prism Witches does not mean you have to be polyamorous.
No,
That's
it's not.
no. It's not discouraged, but it's not mandatory. And we'll talk about destruction of capitalism and relationship styles at some point in time. But so I just happen to be the luckiest girl in the world that everybody in my polycule, Rain is my nest. Polyamory means that you have more than one relationship. You allow yourself to explore different kinds of relationships with whoever you vibe with.
Healthily, with communication.
Ethically,
and ethically,
preferably.
and no lies.
Yes. And this is really, polyamory has really helped my magic, because polyamory has helped me learn how to deal with people better, and then I learned how to deal with spirits better, and then my magic works better. All of us here have multiple relationships. I am married to Rain. They are what I call my nesting partner. We live together. But I guess that also includes Isaiah, because of the story we're about to tell. And Isaiah and Briar are on their second date?
It's hard to
2.5?
I don't know.
Yes.
I kind of see PCR as like one date, but then
Okay,
you could
yeah,
divide
so-
it up into 3 dates.
Yes,
So who
there you
knows?
go. Yes. And Cade is dating Rain, and you have one other partner too, right? Yeah. So when we earlier we were talking about nesting partner, that's what all that was about. So a lot of times for the last 2 years, not every holy day, but a lot of them, the polycule has gotten together and done ritual, and that's really what we were also practicing for PCR. And so Imbolc is what you're talking about. Isaiah at that time was in Briar's place. They were new. This was their first time here, and we did a ritual that night. And that was your first time being in ritual.
Yeah.
And your first time doing magic with us.
Yes.
Yes. So then
And
tell
it was
about
my
your
first time doing intentional
magic. So tell us about your experience in the ritual.
So yeah, just to give context a little bit, me and Tig had talked last year, and then we stopped talking, and then we started talking again, and Tig invited me to.
And I want to be completely, transparent with everybody that was because of my mental health issues.
So we started talking again, and Tig invited me to Imbolc. And I show up. I didn't really know what to expect. I was definitely just kind of going with the flow. And we do the ritual.
Well, I want to also talk to people about. I'm trying to prove a point here about variety of technique, about all the different ways you could do magic. So describe the ritual a little bit. How your experience of it.
You're asking me to remember.
Can anybody, me and you wrote it together. Can you describe what we did?
I remember that first of all, we feasted as usual.
Yes.
The feast was heavily influenced by cheese.
Yes.
Because the goats and the ewes began to have milk around Imbolc time.
We did the cheese triangle.
Yeah. Hell yeah. We also did the earth waking up from winter.
Yes.
And symbolized by the dragon, and it was uncoiling the dragon.
Uncoiling the dragon. I want to back up a little bit. That we did. What do you call it every time we have a feast on a holy day, we set aside a space for the ancestors?
The dumb supper.
Yes, the dumb supper.
So we had a moment where nobody spoke to allow the ancestors time to come manifest themselves with us,
and we make them a plate, light some incense and candles. Mm-hmm. So we talk about our ancestors for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we like to we bring up our ancestors, and I think that was the time that I brought my dad's dog tags that time, because that was the first ritual we had since Samhain.
Right.
And then Samhain was about death, which was just as well. But this was the first time that we were doing a ritual that wasn't about death. And I wanted to bring my dad's dog tags that time because I was afraid that if I did it at Samhain, that would be too powerful.
And then Rain led us in a craft. We made bridges crosses.
Yes.
Ooh,
Well,
that was
no, it was your idea. I was just
Well,
good
you
at
but
it.
you were the
You
one.
were just good at it.
But you know, we made, and I'm trying to prove a point that magic can be silly and fun.
Mhm.
It does not have to be serious. And we made bridges crosses out of
Pipe
cleaners.
pipe cleaners.
Because straw was going to be just
Yeah,
too much.
And we just had a lot of fun, and we laughed, and we just had a good time together. And all of this is all like when you do magic, when you want to move a lot of energy, it's all build up. Everything in that night was intentional. We had planned it out in advance, and it's all leading up to opening up the spirit and the ritual.
Yeah. And then the actual ritual was everybody kind of gathering together in a spiral.
Right.
And then we lit candles. Each one of us lit a candle as we like kind of fanned out in the spiral. And it was meant to, symbolize the dragon like unfurling and like beginning to gain its power back.
Right.
The power of fire. And yeah, it was surprisingly well executed.
It was.
And it was like there was a vibe.
It was a vibe.
Everybody felt like moved by it.
And I want to talk about the cheese real quick because it was just funny. Because the day before, me and Cade had been joking around, and we just had like the cheese dragon, and we actually we had food, and we had the hors d'oeuvres, hors d'oeuvres,
Yeah.
and
Charcuterie board.
right, and we had little blocks of cheese. So I actually at the last minute, I just was like having fun with it. I gave everybody a piece of cheese, and we cast our intentions into the cheese, and the intention was with the uncurling of the dragon. We were all of us were in a situation in our lives because I had been talking to all of you. We were all struggling with something. We were all stuck with something. Mm-hmm. And so we put our intentions into the cheese and we ate the cheese. So now.
Yeah. So we did the ritual, and I immediately got up, and Tig asked me, "Are you okay?" or like, "How am I feeling?" And I was like, "I need a hug," because I immediately felt like there was a presence with me. Mm-hmm. And like I felt like my heart was heavy. And so Tig gives me a hug, and like the feeling is just so cemented in my mind. Like even to this day, like I can feel how I was feeling, and then my life turned on its ass. Like holy shit.
Like the next day. Okay, so a lot happened. You were in an abusive relationship.
Yes. Let me talk.
Okay.
I was in an abusive relationship. I was not getting paid by my job, and so I was a college student, or I am a college student, and I was stressed out of my mind. And the next day I got a job. I got the call that I got the job.
Was that before or after I made the money jar?
After.
Okay.
And then.
Okay, context. A money jar is a hoodoo practice where you put in jar magic. There's a lot of jar magic,
yeah.
but with a money jar, like it's concentrated intention.
Right.
Like so, you put herbs, you put whatever brings things to you, and then you're like, okay, what do you want brought to you? And then you put money or
you should write, or we should like talk about. You're very good at jar magic and hoodoo.
It was actually 2 days later.
It was 2 days later, and then more context. Kate, can you briefly tell us what Imbolc is?
Imbolc is the so it is the first Sabbath after winter. It's also the first. It's the so. All right. So the Wheel of the Year has four solar holidays, if you will. and that's Yule, Midsummer, Mabon, and Ostara, which is the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes, and then there's the in between ones. And people usually celebrate the in-between ones more than they celebrate the actual solstices or equinoxes. But Imbolc is the first one. Like, Samhain is the last Sabbath or fire festival of the previous year. And then Yule Yule is Yule is the beginning and the end.
Right.
So it's not really it's not the last one and it's not the first one. It just it's there as the year changing.
Right.
So you can't really quite call it the first or the last. So the first, which is Sabbath, and the first fire festival of the year. I'm pretty sure they're all called fire festivals on the in-betweens, but if anybody knows better, please
Oh,
let me
you are
know.
the expert on this.
So Imbolc's the first one. Imbolc is the first abating of winter. So that's when the ewes started to they started to produce milk. The goats started to produce milk because this was the time where the very first seedlings and the very first things that would sprout would be able to start sprouting because of the snow abating slightly, and there was also plentiful water.
And when was Imbolc this year?
Imbolc this year was February 2nd.
February 2nd, and this is May 2nd. So all this shit happened
Oh
between
yeah.
then and now. Okay, so I'm sorry. Back to you, Isaiah.
So, we did Imbolc, and then the next day we did the money jar. And then the next day after that, I got my job.
Right.
And then I was in, like Tig said, I was in an abusive relationship with a man who groomed me, sexually assaulted me, and just overall was a piece of shit. And I lived with him and I was stuck with him. And, Tig mentioned being we all were all stuck with something.
Right.
And I was stuck with that motherfucker. And the next day after Imbolc, Tig's son Dylan got
a free
free.
because my son was commuting from where we live to an hour away to college, and couldn't afford the dorms and didn't want to go into debt for the dorms. And so then he found out that there was a free dorm. He applied, was approved the next day, and 2 weeks later was out of the house.
Not even 2 weeks.
No, it was that weekend. It was that weekend.
Yeah.
That all happened within 4 days.
And then it was kind of like a haha, what if I moved in joke, and then we were like, no, we're not going to do that. And then
We just started dating.
yeah, exactly.
Real soon.
And then my ex attempted to sexually assault me again, and I told Tig not to tell anyone, and then Tig told Rainy.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, and then I got angry.
And then Rain got mad, and Rain was like,
Wow.
hell no. And
Rain was
called, they literally called me.
Rain and I were on a date, and I was so angsty, I was so upset, and I was like, Isaiah told me not to tell anybody, but I'm just I was having a panic attack, and I finally broke down and told you, and you were like, call Isaiah and tell them we're going to go, come to the house right now, and
Yeah, I was literally in a Best Buy with my ex, and so I was they were starting to talk to me, and I was I'm with Redacted right now, and
He who shall not be.
yeah, and I was like, I will call you later, and then I hung up the phone, and Redacted was like, oh, who was that? And I was like, oh, it's just Tig just wanted to chat, and then I ran to the bathroom, called them again, and they were like, move in. They were just like, we're not doing this.
You need to be safe.
You need to be safe.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And then that night I got into a fight with Redacted. I almost said his name. With Redacted. And I literally drove to Tig's house that night. And the next day, we went, called the cops, got all my stuff. And
Try to.
Yeah,
I
tried to
might
get
have
all
fucked
my
that
stuff.
one up.
Yeah. Tried to get all my stuff.
I tried not to snap at him, but I did. So, and then,
Yeah.
then things kind of went off the rails. So.
Yeah, I got all my stuff, and then I moved in, and I was out of that situation within.
That was,
So that was February 20th. I moved in.
Yeah.
So 18 days.
18 days. Yeah. Yeah, that's big shit. And the effects of that spell are still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, because immediately, like, you just kept getting, like, money just kept showing up. On
Yeah.
Right. Every time you were broke, you were like, oh, somebody just gave me money. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, that in bulk was directly influential. What we're doing right now on PPW, like, a lot of shit moved around. And some relationships ended, and it was painful, but they needed to, and that opened up the way.
Mm-hmm.
Briar,
Hello.
what was your first I'm a motherfucking witch moment?
Right. Okay, so I think as a millennial AFAB, a lot of us grew up on like Sabrina Teenage Witch or Kiki's Livery Service or Practical Magic and Harry Potter, and of course as like a fantasy aspect, I always wanted to be a witch, you know. And my parents, they were like, cool, yeah, play with your imagination, we're good. I ended up going to a Baptist junior high where they did not let me bring Harry Potter into the classroom. And that was the first moment I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, because witches are real. And they were like so upset. They're like, don't you dare, they're going to worship the devil. And I was like, oh my God, what?
It's like, you don't say.
Yeah, it's like, huh, interesting. But it wasn't really until college that I started looking into the actual history of witchcraft. And even like, because Wiccan is a way newer thing than I thought it was initially, you know?
Yeah.
Then some Wiccans who've been doing Wiccan since a decade after it started still think it's a lie. Anyway, I'm out of there now.
Yeah, and it's just, there's such a vast, like, perspective on things, and magic, and shamanism, and just going into the whole history of the world, and sociology, and social studies, and looking basically at how colonization really just fucked everything up, and especially when it comes to like gender, and just said no, there are only male and female. And because a lot of people complain about non-binary being they them, that's so new, we don't even have, that's not even a word in the dictionary or something.
It's only a couple of millennia old, you know?
Yeah, right? And it's like, actually it's older than this stupid ass like binary shit we got going on. So yeah, but I think because when it comes to like spells, like unintentional spells, when you blow on a dandelion or like you blow on a candle at your birthday for a wish, you know, there's a lot of little stuff that we've always done that's just so ingrained in our culture. But I think the first intentional spell that I've done was probably like a money pot, because, you know, we crashed the economy and
Capitalism.
You know,
yes.
Student debt and
Economy is shit right now.
especially as an artist. Money's just never really been stable, so that's always been something on my mind. And I did not experience like a quickness, I don't think, to money, but I've always had a really good stability with like family and friends. And my aunt ended up moving back to California, and she's always telling me if I need money, I can just let her know. And she buys tattoos for me, and she also like gave me her iPad when like my computer system broke, so I couldn't even draw it and do flash for tattoos or anything. And she's just been such a good like stability source for me and supporting me through my apprenticeship and through my career so far. There's also like my car I was still paying off got a crack in the engine block, and I only had it for like a year. And so I got it from CarMax, which fuck you, CarMax.
Fuck you, CarMax.
And I went to them complaining. They're like, oh, we can sell you a new car and we'll just roll over what you owe from the first one onto the new one. It's like, hell no. And people were telling me left and right I should do claims court and get at least like $10,000 from it and something. But I let it go. I didn't end up pursuing that. I did end up solving the problem myself. And just, I went to another dealership and they were like, oh yeah, we'll if you buy this car, we'll cover what you owe left of the previous car, basically. It's like, cool, at least now I have a fresh slate, you know. But like looking back, I'm thinking maybe the crack of the engine block could have been the sign to go to the claims court, but I just didn't feel confident enough to pursue that.
See, okay, so you just gave us the perfect fucking segue into what we're talking about today, is listening.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that. When I say listening is an important skill, if I wish that I could rewind 20 years and somebody tell me one thing about magic, it would be learn how to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that been?
So obviously didn't listen back then, but definitely since then, I've definitely kept an eye out more for coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of, while driving, listening to audio tapes, especially, witchcraft all over the place. There was one time that was probably the most interesting coincidence I've encountered, is that I was listening to audio tape about silence and listening, and it said that if you rearrange the word listen, you can spell silent.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, the whole audiobook, the whole thing shut down. Like my whole audio system in my car just went dead silent. And I was just driving in the middle of the night with like just my thoughts. And it's like, all right, I guess if you got a message, what is it? And just listening to my own thoughts and reflecting on where I am in life and what is going on. I've never really, I don't think, received like a vision like that beautiful, the beautiful vision that you had, Cade, with like the description and the woman in the forest. Like that's so mesmerizing and interesting. I feel like I haven't really quite experienced that yet, but more when I listen, I look out for coincidences and for overall listening, and for overall like just generic messages of like trusting yourself and knowing that like you're where you're supposed to be at every moment of your lifetime.
Yep.
You don't need to question so much about if you're doing the right thing, because like whatever lesson you're learning, you were there to learn it.
Yep. And the universe is always teaching you, and if you learn how to listen, you will prevent a lot of pain in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Go. Rain.
Oh, I definitely wanted to, like, because you're talking about listening, and I definitely want to talk about how, like, starting out, just listening to people, like, they're always like, you have to choose your deities, and you have to do this and do that, and so I remember being, like, under the assumption that, like, you choose your deity, but in actuality, your deity chooses you. And
you are the Pikachu in this situation.
Exactly. So like, I looked up to and worshipped Bast for a very long time, and I want to say it was a few years into that, and then I started listening, and then Sekhmet showed up, and then Oshun showed up, and all of them have been very feminine, and like in this point in my life, I feel like Loki is trying to talk to me, and I don't want it.
Loki the shapeshifter. Loki's an NB if there ever was one.
And I don't want it, mostly because, like, I, like, there's so much information. So, like, you can know all about, like, a deity, but, like, there are, like, some things I definitely, like, don't like the insects. Like, a lot of people that worship Loki, they're like, get ready for insects to be in your house. And I'm like, no.
Oh, that's why there was things crawling in.
No, it weren't. Don't
You
say
saw
that
it
to
too.
me.
You saw it too. You looked at it. You were just like, get it off. Like, yeah, things. Yeah.
No. See, I can't. Like,
You can't.
Loki needs to leave me alone.
Wait, Sekhmet, isn't that the one that's like, she was like the first vampire?
Well, Anne Rice, right?
Yeah.
No, but that's like a legit thing. Like Sekhmet was like the dark goddess or whatever that was doing that because there was that video of that lady who went and tried to take pictures of the Sekhmet statue. and
True.
they were not happening. Like all kinds of crazy fucked up shit was going on every
Yeah,
time she
and
tried
the
to take a
camera
picture.
kept failing and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yes.
But definitely like I worship Bast, and I honestly feel like that was like a trial, like the free trial before the full subscription. And
I remember Bass when you really learned to listen. Like Bass was sassy with you.
yeah, Bast kicked my ass.
Yes.
But I definitely feel like I was in a place where I wanted to be feminine, and so I just kind of leaned into that because Bass is very sensual and fertility and like maternal like protectiveness and things like that, and it when Setclat started talking to me, it was definitely more like, no, you don't need any of that, like you need to like toughen up, and you need to like be stronger and stand on your own and things like that. And then I think Oshun showed up basically telling me to like go have a hoe phase, like before I was ready for a hoe phase. they're like why sure, be a hoe, and I'm just like no.
in both in magic and spiritual development, which are really the same thing, it will take directions you did not expect.
Exactly. And like now I definitely feel like everything's becoming more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, if I have to give a chapter for this point in my life, it's definitely the fluid chapter.
Right.
Like I'm being more flexible with like everything, with like my relationships, my thought processes, my choices, like what I want to do with my life. Like instead of being so fixated and critical on everything,
Right.
like being poly, like I was under the assumption that every person I want a relationship with, it has to be like a full on relationship, like basically like monogamy with extra steps, and like I was like, but why though?
Right.
Why though?
Right.
And then same thing with school, like, oh, I can go to school and do this, oh, but is it gonna feed me? Oh, is it gonna do this? Oh, is it gonna do that? Or what is my purpose? Kind of like mindset.
Right. Exactly, and that's because we are taught that there is one head, the head. There's one mind that's in your head. Well, first of all, your mind isn't in your head, but we actually have three. We have the mind, the mind in our head, the mind in our heart, the mind in our stomach, our guts, and when we talk about listening, that's really what we're talking about. Is you've got to learn to lean into it and be weird, because if you open up your heart, that's where you listen. If you open up your heart and you listen to the spirits, they're going to tell you to do some really weird fucking shit. Hey, this person you just started dating, have them move in with you. Hey, go be a hoe. And you can move up. This is what we're taught to do. We're taught to move up into the mind that's in our head, and logic. Well, my mother said, society says, capitalism says this. Don't be a good person, follow the rules, and don't cause trouble. Well, no, because the spirits are going to tell you to do some weird shit, and if you do it, it'll turn out. Because I'll tell like. A story now is, I'll add on to the story that Isaiah was saying, is that at that time, when we did this magic, Isaiah was in a bad spot. Isaiah at that time was planning on moving in with his aunt. And we were trying to get that to happen faster. That's what we thought was going to happen. No, what actually happened is my son got a room and Days was gone. And that was a better situation for him. And he didn't even participate in the ritual, but he was here in the house. Yeah. So he got unstuck because he was having a hard time communicating.
He ate the cheese. So.
He did, yes. And then we had a room empty, and then Isaiah was in a bad spot. And now, let me tell you, everything, I just met this person, and we just barely started dating. I don't really know them that well. I've had bad situations happen to me before. All of these thoughts came up in my head, But if you really want your life to start going right, listen to the spirits. Do the weird shit.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like it's like it's almost like a staircase, because like it's all like do what your parents tell you, and it's like do what's acceptable for society, and like you just go lower and lower, and then it goes from do what you will and harm none, and then you get all the way at the bottom, and then it's just do no harm, take no shit.
Right.
Do no harm, take no.
Right.
So can we implement eat the cheese as can that be a phrase that's like the opposite?
That's going to be the title of this, podcast.
I would propose that it is actually the opposite of drink the Kool-Aid.
Right. Absolutely.
You're
Because
gonna turn back.
Because Dylan ate the cheese.
Can we eat the rich with a side of cheese?
Yes, absolutely. Barbecue sauce.
I mean, we have to have cheese. Like, you know, it kind of be gross to just eat them.
Right, you gotta have a balanced meal. You gotta have your vegetables, your bread. You know,
Throw some grapes in there. Have a little charcuterie
some
board.
sweet tea. Yeah, some sweet tea.
Get
Do a
creative
picnic.
with it.
Oh my god.
Who wants to go next? We got Isaiah and Cade
To do what?
to talk about
Listening.
why is listening important in magic.
Why is listening important in magic?
I can go.
Yeah,
Do you
go
want
ahead.
to go, Kate?
No, you must have been listening this whole time and forming your interjection or your
Yeah, and Kate's gonna have to go into their notes to figure out their answers.
Listening is how I knew I've been a witch my entire life. So listening is like probably the thing that made me a witch. When I was younger, and like you can ask my family all this, like I would go climb the tree in the backyard and lay on it and just listen to it talk to me. Like, and my family was like, "You're nuts," and I was like, "Yeah, I know," but it would tell me stories.
Trees are amazing to talk to.
And I thought, as I grew up, I was like, oh, I was just daydreaming. Like, but no, it was telling me stories. And there's this one time in my life in particular that I told Tig this like a couple weeks ago, where I was listening, I was at the beach, and I was having a really hard time with my mom that day. And so I went and I walked away and I sat on the sand and I looked at the ocean and I just started breathing with it. Every time I went out, took a breath in. Every time I came back in, took a breath out. And I could feel myself listening to it breathe, listening to the pulse of the ocean. And it took away all of my angst, all of my pain, all of everything. And I didn't know I was me connecting with the spirits then, but looking back now, I'm just like, holy shit.
Yep.
Like, I was just connecting with the ocean, and the ocean was connecting with me.
And you did us a favor. Like, we'll have to recap this at the end, because my last question was going to be give us a technique, and that is a technique that I have used, is just go out in nature and sit down and shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, yeah, I've done that my entire life, and you think that a lot of people think when they do that they're just meditating, or that it's just their mind making up the stories, or it's their mind playing tricks on them. But now that I'm a witch, and now that I know how sensitive I am, I posted something in the group on Prism Witches today, where it says, I spent a lot of my life being told by family, ex-friends, ex-partners, school admin, etc., that I was too sensitive. Turns out I was unwilling to sit silently through mistreatment and cultures of abuse. Sensitivity is a strength. Never let weak people convince you otherwise.
Absolutely.
And like, that just ties into what I was saying, like, sensitivity to the spirit, sensitivity to all that is just strength. is just power.
I was just telling you a couple of days ago, don't listen to me when it comes to time. The other day, that's why a lot of witches live in solitude, or they need solitude, because like when you really attune your antenna, that is your aura. Your aura is the interface between you and the rest of the universe. And it's both an antenna that both sends and receives energy, thought, whatever. And once you start learning to listen and you learn to tune and clean up your antenna, get these people's fucking energy away from me. Then you gotta be, yeah.
That goes into like what we were talking about at PCR, which was being able to listen to ourselves when it comes to the energies of other people.
Yes.
So
if you get a bad gut feeling about the man in the woods, then you go and walk off with the bear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like even just when it comes to, because like when we were on our walk, we were talking about our intuition and what intuition actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And like, a lot of people say, some people say to not trust your intuition, but your intuition is less a gut feeling of yourself. It's the spirits.
Right.
It's the spirits telling you.
Right. And that's an important thing. When I say listen, learn to listen, we're not saying, what most people say when they say listen to your intuition, because I'm sorry, but they don't even know what the fuck intuition is. What most people are going around saying is their intuition is just their surface feelings and thoughts. You have to learn to separate what is my feelings. So learning to listen, you have to learn to listen to yourself. How do you feel when you're angry? How do you feel when you're anxious? How do you feel when you're sad in your body? How does your entire body, from your tip of your toes all the way up to the top of your hair, feel when you're having different experiences and emotions? You need to become mindful of your life and how you live it. And then when you contact spirit, you could say, okay, this is not me. This is not my thoughts. This is not my emotions. This is something else. This is what I need to listen to.
Exactly. Yeah, because like a lot of people are like, how can you tell the difference? You know what I mean? And it's learning to accept and understand yourself is the first step in order to listen to anything else.
Right, exactly.
I also wanted to touch on like listening, because it's definitely harder when you're in an environment with so much static.
Yes.
And that static can be like anything. It can be like having to live with people that don't believe you. And like I feel like I went through that a lot growing up, like because I will always tell my mom, like, I see things, there's a man in my closet, there's a dog like following me around the house, there's this, there's that. And it's like, oh, you're crazy, oh, you're just seeing things, oh, you watch too many horror movies, oh, like none of that exists, oh, you need to go inside your room and pray, like just just, and like, so there's so much static. And then so what do? Like that, I feel like that's where a lot of like almost like teenage angst comes from, because like parents
and adult angst.
Yeah, and parents refuse to listen.
Yeah.
And like, so then what do? We first instinct is to get away from the static. And so that's why I spent most of my time not being at home, like doing everything possible to not be home. And
the last three generations, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, we have increasingly dealt with that static. And by the way, we're also talking about queer, trans. You want to talk about parents not fucking listening, right? Holy shit, right? So we have increasingly within each generation filled that static, because now we have these little things that we can carry around in our pocket and distract ourselves from this angst, which is largely the static and trauma and all this shit. And so to learn to listen, you've got to put your fucking cell phone down. You've got to take your headphones off. You got to stop playing the video games. You got to stop watching TV. And not all the time. I'm not telling you to become a monk and go, I'm talking about start carving out time for yourself every day. And carve out a big chunk of time for yourself every week to really get alone as far away as you can get. And maybe that's your backyard. I go out and drive out into the wilderness. I take a shower because you said you need to cleanse, right? Mm-hmm. I take a shower, go for a hike, usually on Sunday mornings, and that's my time to commune with the spirits. I'm the fuck away from everybody.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, like, a lot of, we're on this path of magic for mental health and magic for healing. So, like, a lot of the times, like, one of the things that my therapist told me when I first started seeing her was, you can't heal in this place you were traumatized.
Exactly.
So, like, people, as I've started healing with magic, as I started doing that, I was only able to do that because I'm here.
Right.
Because I'm safe.
Right.
Step
one, I used to teach self-aid buddy care when I was in the military, and self-aid buddy care is the military version of first aid, but first aid that actually works, because the first aid they teach to civilians is ass. Okay, so step one to healing is take the knife out. You know what I mean? Like, remove the fucking thing that is harming you. You cannot heal when you are in a dangerous situation. And the first thing that you need to do is do magic to get yourself fucking safe. Yeah. I do not, when people hear me talk about magic and spirituality, they assume that I'm talking about floaty things and angels. And no, magic, you could do magic for what you need. What do you need? You need to be fucking safe. You need to get out of that goddamn situation that you're in. Step number one. Yeah,
because it's part of the static that's, like, hard for you to listen with.
You are in survival mode.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Cade should go next.
Yes.
And then I think we need to eat because Cade's...
Okay, well, and I want to say, we have one more question after this, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Brief disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, but my ex-wife is one. Speaking of a metaphorical knife, if you are actually stabbed with a real knife, leave it in.
Yes.
You're going to have to block all that blood from coming out. If you rip it out, it's going to rip out other stuff with it.
I should say stop the bleeding. Yes.
Yeah, stop the bleeding. Yes. That is definitely the part you're supposed to do. In regards to static, there are many complaints from old people that ADHD didn't exist when I was a child and all that other shit that they love to say. And they complain about how autistic is fairly new, which is a strange thing to say for the generation that made Rain Man.
They say that, but my dad came home, sat on the couch, opened up the newspaper, and just sat there for 3 hours reading the paper.
Okay, and to that end, it has been pointed out several times that life is loud now. Life is constant. Life is stimulating. There's so many people, there's so much traffic, there's so much noise, there's so many things to do. Everywhere you go, there's something, and everywhere you go, you have devices in your pockets, and you turn on devices on the wall. There's constant advertising. Life is so overstimulating now. Mm-hmm. Even 100 years ago, the literacy rate was way lower. The number of people who had electricity in their homes was way lower. Like, the number of people who had running water in a significant portion of the United States was way lower. Life was quiet. Mm-hmm. And when we are experiencing that sort of overstimulation as neurodivergent people, we react a lot more strongly than neurotypicals, because neurotypicals just kind of, it's not their type of stimulation that's going to get them going, but it is the type of stimulation that's going to drive someone on the spectrum completely insane. Mm-hmm. And that's why in recent times people are starting to show these symptoms of neurodivergence. When I was a child, I was tested and I was shown to be gifted, which is when you have ADHD, but the good kind.
Snaps.
My sister, however, didn't show up on the test at all, on the spectrum at all. Years later, we found out that in the late 80s, early 90s, they actually had no idea how to test girls. Because
culturally, AFABs are often, they express as inattentive because it's not culturally acceptable for AFAB people to go run around and scream and climb trees, and but it's culturally acceptable for AMABs to do that. So a lot of times the ADHD is, they both have ADHD, they're expressing themselves. The girl who daydreams and the boy who runs around screaming both have ADHD.
Yeah.
Well, there's the comparison of the autistic girl is the one that laughs a lot and stims like physically, whereas the autistic boy is the one who's trying to light shit on fire.
Right.
But I mean, now if you were to meet my sister and like see her house, it's like, this woman's on the spectrum clearly, and all of us are that way. The entire family is, and but yeah, like our understanding of what neurodivergence is and how it works has changed dramatically over the past 30, 40 years. And so, because again, the Rain Man generation, they're like, if this isn't how you act, then that's not what you have. And that's one of the reasons I hate that stupid Netflix show, Love on the Spectrum.
Oh my God,
I hate
so
it
terrible.
because they get the most. A coworker of mine described it as they get the most Rain Man ass people on that
most
show.
Stereotypical.
Yeah, like to do the most clearly socially awkward.
Or what's the I See Dead People? What's that?
Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense. So they have that idea of autism in their head.
Yeah, it's so because they don't realize that, especially the older people on the spectrum, like you and I, like we had that socialization, like
we had to mask.
It.
We were forced to learn how to mask.
And sometimes violently.
A lot of times violently, very violently in my case.
Violence is threatened against you anytime you like stin or fucking.
I was daily beaten into acting like to presenting very masculine.
And to neurotypical and socialized.
It's a mask, right?
Yeah. So luckily for us, we are beginning to heal, and hopefully, unlike our parents who have unfortunately just such a massive amount of generational trauma, like it's mind-boggling. But I think that we are now starting to be able to recognize that and come out of it, and hopefully we can do the same thing that many generations ago used to happen, which is where we actually try to build the world better, as opposed to hating people for having it easier. Right. Back to listening. So, so I have often been told myself that I have something that is apparently, it's called the Liber Sparkle. I've been told that once because I complain about this thing. I personally have a practice of listening. I have a personal practice of observation. I try to learn about things before making decisions in general. And that's just that's kind of how I run my life. I do a lot of listening to people. I do a lot of observation of people. And
you're very good at seeing patterns.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see those patterns because I want to make an informed decision.
Right.
Always.
Can I just interject that is another way of listening to the universe. Pay attention to fucking patterns.
Yes, true. And informed decision, of course. Informed consent is, of course, like the opposite of traditional religion, which is why I had to leave that shit behind. So as a result, people in general, maybe it's because of my calm demeanor, maybe it's because of like my reservations of judgment, as Nick, the narrator, says in The Great Gatsby. He reserves judgment until he fully understands the situation. And maybe it's for that reason that people oftentimes have no problem just kind of talking to me, and they talk a lot. And which is fine with me because, like I've said before, I love tea. I love to get that stuff, and I will happily collect information and just be like, all right, I mean, not always, not for enough.
It's so funny because I'm always like, I don't want to talk shit, and you're like, oh, please talk shit.
No, please talk the shit. Let's hear this. I'm also one of those people that I really enjoy listening to people when they know what they're talking about. Like, I really love to hear people who talk with like a brain behind them. And And yeah, maybe that's why the engineers like me at work so much, because I love to like ask them questions and I get all excited and they talk to me. And
So your STEM is listening to people?
I guess so, but I'm also a class traitor because, you know, I listen to the officers and I'm supposed to be enlisted with everybody else, which in the civilian aerospace world turns into engineers with degrees versus technicians.
Right, which in the military it was officers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like my manager right now was an officer and I was enlisted, and you're like, oh, this fucking.
Yeah, it's really fucking weird. Like if there are two social patterns that will haunt you for the rest of your life, it is high school and the military.
Yes.
Those two things have played out so hard, like in life. Mm-hmm. Like holy shit, the fact that my closest friends are people I still talk to from high school. You know, like Jerry Seinfeld said, some people are going to be your friends for your whole life, and you're just going to have to deal with it.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess I stem by listening to people. I never really thought about that before. Thank you for pointing that out.
Because you get so excited. Like,
I do. I love it.
You get like fired up. Like it's like so. And like it's such an endearing quality to you because you get all excited, then I get all excited, and we end up talking for hours about like this random stuff.
Yeah, and then you like to do the same things I do, where you do like the weird deep dives.
Yeah.
Because we just like to listen.
We're all autistic. Well, I don't know about all of us, but 4 out of the 5.
That's a pretty high percentage.
It is.
Briar's gonna end up autistic by association. Yeah. Can accidentally pick up on some of the tism.
Right. Never been tested, but can't prove shit.
Can't prove shit. Well, I mean, you would have only in the last few years would have even shown up as on the spectrum because unfortunately they don't know how to test AFABs.
I am personally of the opinion that being neurodivergent and being a witch is a Venn diagram that is almost a circle, but if not a complete circle. But that's just my own personal theory.
No, it's fine. I've come to that conclusion too. In fact, the group it's one of these days we'll go into my journey out of Mormonism because the ex-Mormons and the atheists and the pagans and the LARPers and the board games and the gamers and the people who just watch way too many movies, this is all the same group of people. Mm-hmm. And they're all neurodivergent.
You forgot the bookworms.
The bookworms, the people who read too much, which is another thing I love to do. So I guess when it comes to me manifesting some kind of magic in my life, it would have to be the listening part.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that benefited me growing up because I would listen to multiple people talking, which was a good thing in my family because it was so big. And then I had the patience. I'm not usually the type of person that interrupts. I really try hard not to be. And I kind of let the information wash over me, and I absorb what I can. And so I'm very good at being patient, and that way I can drop the bombs at the end. That way I can listen to the whole conversation, and I'm like the witness who comes running into the courtroom at the very end of the trial, I've got information. I saw everything, and then I pronounce it. But for me, listening has always been a power, and I think that learning how to listen is like you said, it's very important for understanding, not just practical everyday life things, but understanding more of the universe. It's through listening.
Yes.
It's through removing yourself from the stimulation. It's from listening to nature, listening to the universe when it speaks and seeing the patterns, observing, absorbing the information. That's how you start to really understand.
Right. And when I first started listening, and when you connect with spirit, you can ask questions, and my understanding of the universe drastically changed, and I started to feel a little insane for a while, and then I started connecting with other magicians and mystics and people on this path, and we all have a very similar or same understanding of reality actually is.
Yeah.
Okay. So before you both ride off into a tangent sunset, you said one more question.
One more question is, give us a technique that has worked for you. And we've talked about a couple of techniques already: sitting in nature, breathing with the ocean. And by the way, like if you're stuck at home, you could get a YouTube video of the ocean or whatever, and you can be creative. Magic often is physical, but if you are disabled, it doesn't have to be. You can do all this in your mind. And we've talked about sitting with trees. That's a wonderful way to learn to listen. Dreams. I'll share a technique that, because we're sitting here in my living room, and right to my right is my ancestor altar, one of the 4 altars in the house. And once a week, I will sit down and give them an offering, share a drink with them, usually coffee or whiskey, because my Uncle Bob liked his whiskey, and so do I. And I'll talk to them verbally out loud. I'll talk to them, tell them what's going on in my life, give them an update on the family, tell them what I'm struggling with, what I'm happy with, what I'm grateful for, what I'm sad about, and then I will shut the fuck up and just sit there and be quiet and drink my drink until the incense burns out.
You want me to go next?
Yeah.
So a lot of my learning and listening happens in my sleep, and so I sleep way too much. Just speaking for being like a clinically depressed person, I sleep way too much. But when it is actually time to sleep, when it was the appropriate time to sleep, I value sleep very much. And so I do things like you just saw today. I bought a new comforter that will keep me nice and cool so I don't wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night.
Can I interject real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Creating an environment for magic is important.
Exactly. Like a lot of like my visions, or ancestors or people that have passed on, like visiting me in my dreams and talking to me and spending time with me. And so like I definitely try to create like a very calming space, and like almost like having company over. Like you can't have company over when like the space is not welcoming, and so like when the space is welcoming, like nice pillows, blankets, stuffed animal, candle.
When if you're gonna invite the ancestors, if you're gonna invite the spirits in, think about like you're having company over.
Exactly. And so like I know they're going to come to me, so I try to make it inviting as possible.
Yes.
So that's me.
You already gave us a technique, and I already did. So Briar, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah. No pressure. I think creating a space is very important, like you said. For me, rearranging my room is a good way to do that. Like just earlier today, I've been moving so much stuff around because just clutter everywhere, and lately I've been feeling very disconnected. And today I spent time to like, okay, this is the work area, and this is the spiritual area, this is the crafting area, and dedicating certain furniture to different spaces. And it's interesting that you point out your altar here, because I end up putting my money pot on my workstation today. And that in itself, I can now make, even though there's a big ass printer on it, even though there's all this technology, I could make that into a altar in itself for that.
Yes, absolutely. There's a money jar, or there was, I don't think there is right now. There's a money jar on that windowsill. We have altars, but we also there's magic all over the fucking house, really. Yeah.
I have trinkets.
Yeah. So I'll just wrap it up by saying, when you do magic, you're always doing something. Your magic isn't failing. Your magic never fails. You need to learn how to listen. Sometimes the universe says no. That doesn't mean your magic fails. You received the answer. That you don't need that. You wanted it. You don't need it. Now you can push, but you really shouldn't. your life goes a lot better, and you start learning a lot more and developing a lot more when you learn to make space in your life and connect with spirit and be still and listen. So thank you guys very much. This was wonderful and exciting, and I love this, and I hope we can keep doing this. And I love you all. Blessed be.
Blessed
Blessed
be.
be.
What was this mean? Love you, bye.